All right, in light of all the sort of frothy enthusiasm for the metals complex, for the different price movements in underlying metal commodities, I'm going to just do a quick video on just some advice or some thoughts to keep in mind when you're investing in, say, mining companies that participate in the movement of an underlying commodity like, say, gold or silver or copper or aluminum or uranium or whatever the metal might be. Couple of major principles. The first one is that these supply-demand dynamics, like the cycle of a commodity, the underlying commodity, tends to be very, very long. You get these cycles that can be 10 years, sometimes many, many years, and it's just because it takes forever to bring on new capacity. The amount of time from discovering, say, a new gold mine or discovering a new copper mine and bringing that metal into production such that it can be used by the marketplace, it can be many, many years, sometimes a decade or longer. And this is why these commodity cycles happen with such violence and over such long time periods. So if you actually think there's a commodity cycle happening, one thing you can do is pretty safely bet that the commodity cycle will last longer than you think. It's probably going to be a long-term cycle. Okay, so that we'll start with that with the first piece of advice or first sort of underlying principle. Now, the other thing is when you find, say, a mining company that produces such a metal, you're going to see that that mining company, that stock is up a lot, like ridiculously a lot. And so you're also finding it kind of looks like it's already over or it's already reflected in the stock price. Probably not true, actually. What you kind of end up having to do is start nibbling at some of these mining companies, some of these miners at nauseating prices. Like you just have to suck it up and start buying, but you want to be humble about that too. And one of the ways to do it is to just use dollar cost averaging. And the other thing to keep in mind, an underlying principle, is over the course of a metal cycle, you're going to see a lot of epicycles of volatility in the underlying stocks. And so there will be 50% drawdowns. There'll be big sell-offs in miners that are producers of a metal that is in structural shortage. And part of this is you just think about the position of, say, somebody who owned this, the mining company all along. Maybe they're up like 5 times on their money now, and reasonably they might want to sell, right? And there'll be periods where the enthusiasm gets a little too excessive or it gets a little frothy, and then there'll be periods where people are a little too pessimistic, right? And you'll see the stock go up and down, and it's better, instead of trying to predict what the stock is going to do, because we don't know, it's better to just react to the stock. You put some on at the higher price, but then when a sell-off happens, that's when you can start to buy a little bit more aggressively. So this is how I try to traffic in kind of this sort of phenomenon. And just remember, the cycle is going to be longer, probably longer than you expect. Again, we don't know for sure. And the stock will undergo much more volatility than you think over the course of this underlying metal cycle. Okay? And then one other, I guess, nuance to think about is there is a risk curve when it comes to the miners. And usually the way people frame it is you'll have this sort of large diversified miners that are, maybe they're exposed to multiple metals or they have mines in multiple countries. And so there isn't kind of maybe country-specific risk or political risk that may come into play. So those are good places to be because you don't have kind of as much idiosyncratic risk with those stocks. But once they've moved a lot of times then people will start to look further down into what are called junior miners. And a junior miner is basically, let's say, a company that has metal discovery, or they have, say, a lease, or they own a mine somewhere, but the mine isn't actually in production. And this company needs to raise money, which they do by diluting shareholders often, or they might want to sell the property out to one of these larger diversified miners, right? So maybe the analogy to think about is you have your large pharmaceutical companies that are diversified and dominant, and then you have like your biotech companies that maybe have 1 or 2 drugs that may or may not play out, right? And so here is where you might want to look at, say, a field bet of a few different junior miners in the metal you want to play, and some of them will work out, some won't. But people do think about that is sort of the next place to go. Once the major diversified miners have done well, you start to participate further out on the risk curve in some of these junior miners. But again, you're going to see a lot of volatility, a lot of surprises, a lot of negative surprises. And there are always jokes about how people lose all their money in junior miners, right? But every so often, one of these junior miners works out. And so this is maybe where you either avoid that space at all and just stay humble and avoid it. But also, if you do decide to traffic in it, don't make huge statement buys in one company. Make field bets. Just be humble, basically, and be ready for surprises, okay? So just some general advice on how to play stocks levered to given commodities. And yeah, the final message here is stay humble, all right? Thanks so much for watching.